Hi guys. For some stupid reason, I already recorded this video outside and my microphone didn't record. So, great. Let's go again. Today, I wanted to talk about this feeling that you get when you're really stuck and blocked. You know something's there, but you can't translate it into words. And the minute you try to translate it into words, it's like completely gone. You're in a conversation that matters. Someone's asking you how you feel about something and your mind just goes blank. The answer is there, but for whatever reason, the words won't come. It's not emotional numbness or disconnection. You are feeling something, but there's some kind of barrier between feeling and your ability to articulate that feeling. There's actually a word for this, and the Greeks have thought about this for over 2,000 years. I'm going to explore what actually creates that block in the first place, and for me there's like 4 or 5 core reasons. Understanding what it is and why it happens can help us all to get really unstuck. The name for this feeling is called alexithymia. Alexithymia literally means no words for the emotions that you're having, but it's not necessarily that you don't feel anything. It's that you know that you feel an emotion, but you don't have any kind of pathway to translate or articulate the emotion itself. There's some kind of block between the feeling and your ability to produce the journey towards understanding it. You might still feel like a physiological response. You might feel really stressed, your heart rate might spike, you might feel really anxious, but you have no understanding of the reasons why you feel that way. You end up being left with the sensation of something you feel, but you can't really navigate your way through. And I think that's quite intimidating. If you can't navigate your way through to understanding something, you can't act on it. So you almost feel like you're going to be stuck with this feeling forever, but you don't even know what the feeling is. Horrible, like meh feeling, because it just can sit in your body really unprocessed. And I think also, like I said earlier, emerges as symptoms of anxiety or shutdown or even just like pure fucking rage for no fucking reason. The number one reason most people actually get this feeling is avoidance of facing the truth. You feel a certain type of way about someone, about a situation, about a partner, about your life, and you've been sitting in some kind of half acknowledged truth for months, weeks, years, whatever it is. You've created this space where you can potentially function without fully confronting it. Part of the avoidance is you're just terrified of what's going to happen when you say that feeling out loud. Is someone going to get hurt? Is someone going to feel angry? Are they going to leave? But I actually think the deeper fear is facing yourself and the fact that you're feeling that in the first place, because once you have to articulate something, you then have to let it exist in the world and live with the consequences of it existing in the world. And that means that you're going to have to act on them. You can't avoid the reality any longer. I found in my own life is that actually people don't shatter when they get a hard truth. They usually transcend themselves. Your capacity to deal with something and your resilience is not fixed. Like, for example, just because it's 3 p.m. and most people say that 3 p.m. is when you start winding down, doesn't mean that you don't have endless capacity to do lots of stuff beyond 3 p.m. or work hard into the night about something that you're passionate about. And in that same way, I feel like you have a lot more resilience and ability to face a hard truth than you actually realize. The more times that you rip the band-aid off or expose yourself to the hard truth or face something that you've been avoiding, the more that you prove to yourself that you can survive it and it was literally fine. There's this middle gap in between not knowing what the truth is or avoiding the truth and acting on the truth, and that middle gap is just knowing and speaking it into existence within yourself. I would ask yourself out loud or in your diary, what would change if this feeling that I'm denying is actually spoken out loud? Sometimes the answer is nothing, and that's great. You can just move along and act on it. And sometimes it is going to completely turn your reality upside down. Maybe you can decide it's not the time yet to speak that truth, but I've at least bitten off a little bit of that truth inside myself. Or you might decide like, oh shit, okay, actually the cost of not saying this is so much higher than keeping it to myself. One of the biggest things is anger suppression, particularly big, I think, for women, because we're socialized to this feeling that anger is not reasonable and not womanly and not feminine. If it's a woman expressing anger, it's some kind of sign of mental illness or mental instability or hysteria or even just like bitchiness, whereas if it's a guy expressing that anger, then it's them standing up for themselves or something. Obviously, when it's not socially acceptable to feel that kind of rage, then you're going to learn to suppress that rage before you're actually able to understand that you're feeling that anger and then process that anger and then not have to live with that feeling. Suppression is not just about not speaking it, it's about also stopping that feeling at the source before it can even fully form into something. You kind of feel the activation, but but you immediately apply some kind of internal brake to stop yourself feeling it. And that's almost, I would say, almost a denial of accepting yourself. This has been so automatic in my own life. And like anything, it becomes harder with habit, because if your anger just gets shut down consistently, socially, parentally, or familiarly, then obviously your pathway to sensing and naming that atrophies. But the anger didn't just disappear. Like, the anger is still there, you're still feeling it. And in my own life, I think this really manifested as just generalized low-level anxiety or feeling like something was wrong with me. I think that was a big thing. Like, I would just internalize the feeling and be like, it's not normal for me to be feeling this anger. Like, this is not what I should be feeling, rather than passing the buck on the person that's pissed me off or made me feel like shit, and be like, I'm allowed to feel this, and that's the reason why I'm feeling it, and I know that this is anger because you've functioned it off. Like, but then also you get these like massive shame spirals, because obviously anger sometimes has to come out, and then you'll suddenly get some kind of random explosive rage moment because you've been compressing it for so long, and then you feel fucking awful about it, and you just internalize that shame even more, because you're like, why am I doing this? What's going on? Obviously, I think the first move to shifting this is to, you're watching this video, but also to understand and recognize like some of the physical symptoms of anger. So for me, it felt like a real sense of injustice particularly was one that really was obvious to me. If you learn to spot that pattern really early, then you can help yourself to sort of break that automatic brake that you would normally put on it. You then create like this little pause or gap of choice where you then don't have to act on the emotion at all, and you can actually end up processing it. Sometimes it's not just suppression of a particular feeling because of society or the way that we've been conditioned, but I think it's just general overwhelm and complete shutdown. Probably best described as the going non-verbal and looking extremely calm, but actually screaming, crying, shitting, throwing up inside feeling. I think for me, I'm such a highly sensitive person. Sometimes I feel things so deeply, and that kind of overload can just genuinely make me go like a computer glitching. That's why you get this like really irritating feeling of being in a really high stakes situation or conflict with your partner, for example, and then the exact moment where it should be the most important to be able to say those words, they're just completely elusive and they've completely gone. You can't reach the language because your brain has pulled the shutters down on you, and there's an important reason why it does that. It's trying to protect you, and research shows that cognitive complexity of your speech actually collapses under pressure. So obviously the words that you were already finding hard become even harder to find. So I would probably suggest not waiting until you're in the conversation to try and access those words, and doing some kind of check-in early in the day, noticing, again, like I talk about this all the time on my channel, but just having habits that help you to bring back noticing to yourself and self-reflection. Am I feeling tense throughout the day? Is my breathing shallow? Am I here when I should actually be here before we even have this conversation? I think it's really important to create spaces for yourself that are super non-judgmental and that you can just talk to yourself, like for example in your journal, so you can recognize especially moments that you think probably a friend wouldn't totally understand, where you can acknowledge that that's a bit wild, or yeah, I was really irritated and they were telling me something sad, and that's okay. And like I said in my other video, like you should choose yourself and then see who chooses you, and they're gonna have to just deal with it. Oh, I think I'm gonna have to move. We are back. Sorry, it started pouring it down. This is the reality of living in the UK, because everything just changes in 2 seconds. It felt like a heat wave this morning, and now it's pouring with rain. Where was I? I think what shifts this is you're gonna need a space where you're not performing. Obviously, under pressure, all of this I think gets so much worse because your memory gets particularly consumed when you're stressed, when you repeat an action, or you're someone who's become really habituated to not listening to yourself. The part of your brain that is responsible for interoception, which is called the insula, that part of your brain begins to shrink. It's starting to learn that your internal signals don't matter and just stop feeling. Maybe you learned to put a break on that feeling before it became real, or learned that you were supposed to watch yourself externally instead of internally feel yourself, or felt like you had to keep certain half-truths because you were too scared to face them. But whatever it was, you can learn to create systems that can help those pathways to understanding. That just starts with choosing times where it's not an emergency, it's not something urgent, but just very gently you listen to small signals, and over time that compounds into having a good idea of your internal barometer of feeling. I hope you liked this video. It was a really quick and rushed one, unfortunately, because I was a dummy and didn't check my microphone levels and then had to re-record. I promise a bit more time and space to give to the next video next week. If you are not a regular YouTube watcher, please check out my Spotify. I'm running a podcast called Questions I Ask Myself, which is the same as this video series, and they'll probably upload videos there that are a little bit more long form. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next one, and have a great rest of your week.